Alright folks, so there's no question about it that there's a lot of competition out there in the Troy Bilt repair video business. So, my videos have been in a slump lately. I need to think outside the box. I need to get my views up. So I want to do something a little bit different. Something that there's been a lot of demand for, actually. A lot of my viewers have been asking for this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to repair this rototiller on a $3,000 Persian rug. I'm going to be drinking rum and coke throughout the repair, okay? And I'm also going to be juggling frisbees, okay? I've got 3 frisbees. I'm going to be juggling, repairing, drinking, having a good time. Stand by, you're going to love it. Hi guys and girls, welcome to Clad Keeper's Garage. Today we're going to be working on a rototiller. You know that my favorite rototiller is the Troy Bilt Horse, so that's what we're going to be working on today. I got this machine. I haven't heard it run yet. I know it has some leaky seals on it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run the machine. I want to hear the engine before I get too deep into this, make sure there's nothing wrong with the motor. And then we'll start to tear it down and get into the seals that need to be replaced. This model number on the machine is 12087. I put a little sticker up here, up high. I know a lot of the stickers that they put down on the transmission, they get worn off, they lose its adhesive, they fall off, and then you don't know what it is you're dealing with. I've actually helped a few people online identify their machines. So again, it's the 12087. And like I said, the first thing I'm going to do is just run this thing briefly. I want to hear it, and then we'll go from there. Okay, I'm going to pull the spark plug out, and pretty dry. There's no gas in it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shoot a little bit of starting fluid down the into the cylinder. Put the plug back in. Always start it by hand. Whenever you're threading the plug into a cylinder, always start it by hand if you can. Okay, let's put the wire on there. Okay, so we know it's going to start. Didn't have any thrown rods or anything like that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start to take this apart. I know I have one leaky seal down here in the front of the transmission, and that would be on the input shaft side. So, and I also know that I have at least one of the seals on the output for the drive wheels. What I'm going to do is I'm going to break this thing down, and I'm going to check all the seals on it, and I'm going to show you how we replace the seals externally. I'm not going to take this whole thing apart. I'm going to take some of the components off it, and I'm going to show you how to take the seals off without basically breaking everything down and having a real whole lot of work on your hands. I'm going to try to do this by the least amount of work possible. So I'm going to use 3 different methods for changing out the oil seals in this rototiller. I've got my arbor press over here. I use a socket. This is one way to push the seals out when you have access to the casting. I'm going to use screwdrivers and an awl, right, to take out seals. I'm also going to use my slide hammer with a screw on the end here. When you are using screwdrivers and awls, make sure everything's very sharp. Sharp tool is a safe tool. Okay. So 3 different methods that we're going to use to change out these seals. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off this wire right here. This is part of the kill switch, and let's remove that first. Okay, Now what I'm going to do is take off the throttle cable. So they're both mounted on this plate right here under the carburetor. Okay, and I've got to get a little bit more angle on this throttle cable, so I'm going to do, there's a tie wrap over here. I'm going to cut this off, and that might give me the slack that I need to pull this out, and it did. Right, so you can see you just got that little bent piece of solid wire on the end, and it hooks in right over here on the throttle. And okay, so that's off. This is off. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take off the motor mounting bolts, and looks like I've got a couple of bolts in here I've got to take off as well. So you can see down on top of the motor here, what Briggs & Stratton did was they actually mounted a motor pulling mount on the top of the motor. It goes screws into the head. So what I did was I put a chain. You know, I got a 3/8 bolt here, and it's attached to my chain fall on the trolley. It's directly above it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that to pull the motor. Okay, so I took the first 9/16 bolt out over here. I saw the whole handle assembly go back. So what I think I'm going to try to do now is maybe take off this handle assembly first. And what I'm going to have to do is disconnect this electrical connector down in here to do that. Let's see if we can get in there and get at that. Some of the stuff is in a really tough spot to get to. There we go. Okay, so that's disconnected, and you know, looks like this piece will stay, and this guy here comes off with the handle. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to take this handle assembly off. Looks like that bolt is going to be a 3/4-inch bolt, and I'm going to take it off right from the top here. We'll take off as much cast iron as we can. I've had these off before, and this bolt actually goes down to the transmission. I've already pressure washed this, so you don't want to get any crap, debris down inside the hole. This thread is going to leave a hole for that 3/8 thread going down into the transmission. So just make sure you don't get anything, any dirt or debris down in there. Okay, let's put that guy there, and we'll take this off and out of the way. Now, I'm going to thread this back in so I don't accidentally dump anything down into the transmission. Okay, now you can see there's the shaft right there, and there's the groove that's cut in where that nut and bolt locks this into place. So this switch right here, it's a part of a series safety circuit. It works in conjunction with the kill switch that was over here on the carburetor, just below the carburetor. And basically what it does, you can see right here, there's your plunger, and it just won't allow the motor to start if you're not in neutral, so to speak. Alright, so what I'm doing is I'm sliding a piece of 2x4 underneath the motor here, and hopefully, you know, I'm letting off the chain fall, and let me see kind of where that's at. I just want to see how stable it is. I don't want this thing falling over. That's pretty good right there. It's just rocking back and forth. So I'm comfortable with that. I'll leave the chain connected for now, but I might be taking this off to use on the transmission. Matter of fact, I'm sure I will. This is a pretty heavy machine. It's like, all said and done, it's about 350 pounds. So it's you know, something you got to be careful with when you're moving around. So now what I'm going to do is I know I have a leaky seal on one of these shafts. I think I'm going to replace both of the drive shaft seals for the wheels and this guy here. Now, one of the things I'm going to do before I go and take this apart, I don't know much about the history of the machine, so I want to make sure that there's, you know, it's not a bearing. If a bearing is gone, one of the ball bearings on one of these shafts, or Timken bearing, whatever it may be, and I have a lot of slop here, then that's going to damage the seal. If this is moving back and forth, if it has too much play in it, that will also damage the seal. And so what I'm doing is I'm physically, you know, turning this, and I'm going back and forth with it. I don't feel any slop on it at all. You know, so what I have to do is I have to break apart. The wheels are going to come off, and I'm also going to take off the rear section over here, right? This is a two-piece section. This comes apart pretty easily, but I'm also going to take this guy here off as well. In here, where I took the bolts out, the 9/16 bolts, they were going into the cast iron, right? You've got this guy here, and make sure you don't lose, there's a spacer, right? There's a spacer that goes in there as well, so make sure that when you take... Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm actually putting all the hardware back into a threaded hole that it came off of, just so I don't start mixing up hardware, stuff like that. Sometimes you run into a situation where you've got the same bolt. It might be like a 3/8/16 thread. One bolt might be an inch long, the other one might be an inch and a quarter long or an inch and a half long. And if you mix them up, you know, I've seen it with like cylinder heads before. If you mix them up, you could end up driving, you know, you think you're tightening down the bolt, but you might be driving a hole right through an aluminum casting, right, a crack into it. So you got to be aware of that with your hardware. Make sure that you keep track of it. Like I said, what I like to do is, what I've done here is I've threaded what I took out back into the casting so I don't lose it, and I kind of keep track of exactly where it came out of. It might be the same thread as another one at a different length. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take off this shroud on the back. I've got 2 1/2-inch bolts over here by the filler tube, right there, and then I've got 2 bolts underneath here, right here, on the end of the transmission for the actual tines. So 4 bolts, and this whole thing should come right off with the depth, this whole depth adjustment thing here. Okay, so what I've done now is I've, you know, we've got the shroud off here. Transmission, your tail shaft gear for the tiller drive. I put the front pulley back on so I can just check this out quickly. I wanted to see if the worm gears are good in here. Now you've got worm gears in the transmission here. You also have them in back on this where this input shaft comes in for the rear drive. So if I go up, raise it up a little bit, I can see that the tiller tines are going back and forth. I can also see my wheels going back and forth as I rotate this pulley on the front. So that's telling me right off the bat that my worm gears are probably in pretty good shape. I'll have a little more knowledge when I drain the oil out of this to see if there's any, a lot of times it's gold because one of the gears, it might be, the pinion gear may be brass. But if you see metal in the oil, then you may have to investigate a little bit further. So where I'm at right now, I'm pretty comfortable that these worm gears are in pretty good shape. So one easy way to tell where your oil is leaking from is where you see oil, okay? I see oil leaking. This is oil all around here on this input shaft. If I come down to this drive wheel here, that looks kind of dry, doesn't look too bad. Over on the other side, okay, I can see oil on that shaft. So I know that seal's gone. I'm going to come back here to the final drive, and over here, oil. On the other side, looks dry. I'm probably going to replace that seal anyways while I'm in here. There's also a seal under here. When I break this apart, actually a couple seals under here, I'll make sure they're not leaking as well. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I'm actually going to split this rear transmission from the front transmission, rear drive assembly, or what do they call it? It's going to split right here. These are two 3/4 inch bolts. You have to back them out enough to swing them around. So that's probably enough on that one there. This guy here. Get in here. Okay, I can see it's already starting to separate there. There's a couple of like clutch dogs inside there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little oil in the top on these pins because they're going to have to swing. They pivot around about 90 degrees in order to separate this. And I just have to be careful. I don't want anything. I have to be careful here. I don't want anything crashing down on the floor. What I might do is I might just bring the chain fall around and just put it on this to hold this section up. Okay, that's taking the weight off it there. Let's see if we can. It's not pivoting yet. What I can also do is probably just take the screw right out. That'll work for sure. And then I can loosen up the pivots later. This should hold the front half of the transmission, and okay. So I can see I've got some oil in here as well. You can smell it, it's all gear oil. Okay, bring that over and rest that there for a second. Okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get a drift pin and I'm going to put it down in here onto the roll pin that's going through the shaft and the wheel, and knock this guy out. Alright, I'm gonna get in here as close as I can. I've got an LED flashlight. I think right about there, you can see the seal, you can see the rubber. It's all cracked. Okay? That's how you know the seal is gone at that point. This one here wasn't actually leaking. The other side was. But I'll try to get the light in different angles here. And hopefully you can see the rubber where it's all cracked. So these seals, they all have to be replaced. Alright, so I've got the new seal. I just want to show you where I'm going to drill. I'm going to be drilling right in around here with lettering. As you can see, you know, where the seal rides up against the shaft. There isn't a whole lot of meat in here, so, you know, I'm going to drill a small hole, less than an 1/8 inch hole, and use a small screw to pull this seal out, the old one. But I'm going to be drilling, you know, basically in the center of between the ID and the OD. Again, there's not a whole lot of real estate here to drill into. This is another seal. This one here, you can see, you know, I've got plenty of room to drill. All these seals are metal. The metal on the outside, the metal up to this point, and then you've got, you know, they bond the rubber to the metal. This one here, it's got rubber all the way around, but this is metal on the outside here, and they just, you know, ran the rubber over it. So you are going to be drilling through metal, being careful not to hit the shaft, right? If anything, you want to be more on the outside than on the inside. If you damage the shaft, you're not going to get a good seal. If you damage, you know, on the outside here, go into the casting, yeah, you're going to be able to seal that up. To be honest, you know, you've got about a little more than 1/4 of an inch here, almost 3/8 of an inch of depth. I'm not even going to go in that far, so I wouldn't even be drilling all the way down. So, favoring the outside with the drill for the puller when we pull these seals. So one of the first things I'm going to do, I'm going to start on the wheel shaft. I want to clean the shaft off and then deburr it. Right? And the reason I'm doing that now while the old seal is still in here, is because I don't want to get any crap inside the transmission after I pull a seal if I clean it at that point. So it's pretty rusty in here. I got to make sure there's no burrs. They're going to catch the seal and damage it on the way in. Oh, just going to clean up the shaft a little bit. Not too much. And I'm using plumber's sandpaper on it. Might be a little bit more coarse than some people would like to use, but hey, any port in a storm. And I just want to get any rough edges. I don't want to really sand it down per se. Okay, that feels pretty good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to drill through the seal, put a screw in there, and pull this seal out with my dent puller. I'm probably going to heat it up also a little bit. I'm going to heat this up a little bit with a propane torch just to expand this metal a little bit. I've already soaked it for a day in some penetrating oil. That should help out a little bit. So let's get going with that. So what I did here was I drilled a hole, I got a screw into the seal, and I'm going to heat this area up just a little bit. Then I'm going to put my seal puller onto this collar right here and pull the seal out. Okay, so as you can see, there's the seal, and let me get the light on the back side here if I can. There's the seal, and you can see it's been pretty well hacked up. Okay, I couldn't get it out with the slide puller. So what you got to do then is you got to use chisels or whatever to get this thing out. What you don't want to do is damage your shaft. If you're going to cause any damage, maybe on this race here, that the seal, where the outer seal makes a contact, the outer seal, has rubber, or when you're sliding this in, you could put a little silicone on it, sometimes a little Loctite to help seal it in place. The seal, the rubber, rides on the shaft, right? So if you're going to damage anything, you'd want to cause damage on the outer bore than on the shaft itself. When I'm going in with chisels and screwdrivers, I'm going to use a large screwdriver here, for example, right? I'm not going in at an angle like this. When I'm trying to extract that seal, I'm going in like this, okay? So I'm just smoothly going across the shaft. And if I have to put any pressure on it, I'm just rocking it back and forth on the dull side of the screwdriver. I'm not coming in at an angle onto the shaft. Now I can do that up top side, right? I can come in at a little bit of a sharp angle to get that metal seal out. So all I can tell you is take your time with it. It will come out. Use heat, penetrating oil, and get a couple of different size screwdrivers, chisels to go in. Again, you don't want to damage the shaft. If you're going to cause any damage, you want it to be on this bore right here, on the cast iron, because that can be sealed up. Nothing's really riding on that. Okay, so what I'm going to do is get this ready now to pop the new seal in and go to the other side. Okay, the new seal is ready to go in. I put grease all around it, put some oil on it to get this to slide. I've got a piece of PVC, 1-inch PVC, that's just going to slide over that. I'm going to put on my safety glasses, give that a couple of taps. Okay, that seated nice. I'm going to put a little bit of oil on the outside of that, just to get this to keep it lubricated until it's broken in. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get over to the other side. Okay, I've got the other wheel shaft here, as you can see. So as I clean up the shaft with the sandpaper, I focus on this hole that's going through. This is for the drift pin that holds the wheel on. A lot of times, when you're banging that drift pin in, it ends up hitting the side of the shaft here, and it might mar it. So I want to make sure that there's no sharp edges around this point here. And then I'm basically just trying to take some of the rust down, just so it doesn't catch the seal on the way in. So, you know, I tried to punch it again for a drill, and there's just not enough metal in here to catch it. So what I'm going to do is, where the seal meets the cast iron bore, now I just punched this in just a little bit right along here. I'm going to try to get my screwdriver into this point, to the point where I could use the casting right here as a fulcrum, right? And then pull the seal out that way. Well, again, without hitting the shaft here, just riding up against this cast iron. So let's try that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to heat it and put some oil on it again before I begin to try to pry that out. Okay, got the screwdriver in. There we go. Okay, so that worked. Again, no marring on the shaft, just putting pressure up against the casting here, and that allowed the seal to come out. Again, a little bit of heat. Throw some heat on it, throw some penetrating oil, take your time, don't rush it, and you won't damage anything. So I got the tines off. This is the rear transmission, and I can see the seals have been replaced on this, but what happened was, when they put the seal in, you can see there's a high spot right here, and it's low over here. They didn't seat the seal all the way, and it was in at an angle. So this seal, you can see, it's almost rubbing against the steel right here, and if you get around the backside, it's open. So the seal is, as an exaggeration, is cocked at an angle like that. It didn't go in straight. So this seal here, that's why it leaked. It didn't go in all. They didn't, they made an attempt at it, but they didn't put it in all the way correctly. So as you can see, one hole in the seal. I put the screw in and I pulled that right out. And so I'm going to pop the new seal in right now. And when I put that in, you got to make sure that it's flush, right? You don't want to go beyond the surface of this casting right here, but it's got to be perfectly flat all the way around. This was at an angle, and I want to say that's why it fails. So I've got the new seal in here, about to go in, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my time. This isn't the best way to do this. The best way to install a seal would be with an arbor press, having this all disassembled. But this certainly works if you take your time. What I'm going to do is make sure that this is going down level, right? It might cock a little bit here and there, but I have to compensate for it by hitting one side or the other. So I'm just going to kind of go back and forth with it a little bit to get that in. Again, I have a piece of PVC pipe. This is 1¼ inch pipe, and once I get down where it's almost flush with this cast surface, I might start going around and just tapping it a little bit at a time to get it perfectly straight with the shaft. So I can see that it's favoring one side. It's low here, a little bit higher on the other side. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to compensate for it on the other side. Okay, that's going in nice and straight. So what I'm going to do is when I get down close, you know, I've got this 1.5" PVC right here. I'm going to try to straddle the edge of this with the casting so that when I hit it, it's going to go down flush and not go beyond it. I'm almost going around in a circular motion right now. That doesn't look too bad. Yeah, the person that, you know, the person that installed that last seal, it looked like they were, you know, they were there, but they just didn't take their time. And they didn't look at it after they installed it. It's kind of like banging the thing out. I don't know. That doesn't look too bad right there. I can see, you know, between the metal and the shaft, there's a gap all the way around. That doesn't look too bad. So what I attempted to do was blow through the vent, and I wasn't getting anything going through it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to heat this up. A lot of times the oil that's in here clogs up the vent. If it's old and crappy, it doesn't get changed out, it'll clog the vent and it won't work properly. Yikes! That's what happens. Okay, so on the front pinion shaft, you can see a little bit of wobble there, right? But there's actually shim washers that you put in there, and you actually push in the, it's a Timken bearing, and you push it into a race. There's 3 bolts on here and a gasket. I checked the slop on this before I took it apart, and it looked pretty good. So basically, you know, what you have is this casting here. It was over here, and there was a seal in there. I didn't video the seal coming out. I put it in the arbor press. Basically, you just, you know, I use a socket, just a little bit smaller than the ID of this hole right here, and just push the seal right through. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to order a new seal to go on. So you can see the very last seal was pressed in with an arbor press. I'm going to assemble that now. Again, I'm going to put grease on the seal. I'm also going to put grease on the shaft all the way around. There's a lip right here. It's kind of sharp. Again, I went over this with a little bit of emery cloth just to clean it up a little bit, make sure there's no sharp burrs, and that seal should just pop right on there. So as you can see, I put a couple of hash marks in here. I always do that on the castings before I take something apart, just so that it goes back exactly the way that it came apart. Okay, so what I'm doing now is I'm filling up the transmission here with fluid. It takes about 60 ounces of gear oil. They recommend 140 weight, so I got a multi-viscosity in here. It's 85 to 140. So I want to fill this up. I want to get this at least close to where it should be while it's still on the bench like this, because if I have a problem with a seal, I want to know about it now rather than when I get it all put back together. So I'm not going to fill it up 100%. I'm going to get it close to where it should be, and then I'll roll it around a couple times, see if there's any leaks, and then if not, we're going to start the reassembly process. So you can see what I did here was I made some stickers up with the Brother Labeler. I took this plate off. It was all rusted. The stickers that were on here, it was like a powder coat paint finish that comes off in sheets. You know what I'm talking about. So what I did was I cleaned that off with the on the grinder with the wire brush, and just put some new stickers on here for the PTO, another one for the forward interlock. And what I'll do for this sticker here, I'm going to replicate this and put it up on the handlebars, so it's up in a place where this gets really dirty and grimy whenever you're looking for parts. Again, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It'd be nice if they put this up in an area where it was going to stay clean and not get damaged. So I'm done with this machine. Again, it's an American-made machine, very, very well made. It's cast iron, very heavy. It cuts through it'll cut through sod. It will cut through hard packed ground. It basically will dig up anything you put it on. So this one's ready to go.